Welcome, everyone, and assalamu alaikum to our brothers and sisters in Islam, and welcome to everyone around the world that's tuning in to the first conversation of Conversations with Asia in 2021. We have a great show for you this evening, and it's surrounding a topic that we think is so relevant to what's happening around the world. So, Conversations with Asia, I'm so happy to bring it to you because our whole mission and our whole vision for this talk show is to educate and empower the women of our communities and the young girls that they are raising. So as all of you know, I mean, thank God, we made it through 2020. And 2020 brought on so many different changes for us with health, social distancing, quarantine. I mean, you name it. And so this has affected our youth, our children, those that are going to school, the educational system. And that is what we're going to be talking about this evening. And that is drawing out the best in your special needs child in this new norm of virtual learning. And so I have a very special guest who I am so excited to talk with. I've seen her, I've followed her. I see the work that she does, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And I mean, she is a powerhouse. She is an expert in this field. And she has a company that is called the IEP Coach LLC. And, our special guest tonight is Jamilah Bashir. She has 14 years of experience, not just in the educational system, not as an educator, but specifically to being an educator working with those with special needs. And, I have, three adult children. And, when they were going to school, I mean, we didn't have this virtual learning. Everyone was in school. And I still have friends, though, that have children who are school age children. And they don't have special needs, some of them. And it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for the parents. It's been an extreme challenge for the children. And I do have a special needs child myself. And it was, even with face-to-face learning, we had to adjust to different type of ways of educating and tutoring. And I mean, it was, so I can only imagine for some of my friends who have children with special needs, autism, delayed learning, dyslexia, all the different, learning limitations that some of our children are going through. I can only imagine the challenges that they face now with virtual learning and not having that stimuli of someone face to face. And so this talk show tonight, as I mentioned before, is all about educating and empowering not just, the parents and the mothers, but the young girls that they're raising. And if they have boys at home, we want to make sure that we're taking care of them too. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jamilah Bashir, CEO of the company, the IEP Coach LLC, and self-published author of the book, Because of Her. And so welcome, Jamilah.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome. I want to ask you, with what I learned about you in the discussion that we had and about your book, you're not, as I mentioned before, you're just not an educator, which that in and of itself is such an achievement. But you specifically took on, the work of working with children with special needs. And so I would like to hear, and I would love the audience to hear, what was your inspiration or what was, your driving force to do that type of work?
Sure, absolutely. So when I started school, I started with 2002, and originally I really love science, so I went into biology. However, the chemistry was killing me, and I was like, let me look at. I remember looking in the book of courses you could take, and I remember coming across special education. And when I looked at special education, I immediately thought of my younger sister. My younger sister, her name is Asia. She has an intellectual disability. So when I was looking at it, I was just like, well, maybe I'll go into special education. They need quality, educators. Mind you, I had no intention on ever in my life being an educator. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go in that field.
Right.
When God has a calling on you to do something, no matter what you do, you can fight it all you want, which I was doing in the beginning. It like just
The more you fight it, the more it takes you there.
exactly, just kept putting me on that path. And I remember at the time I was a work study tutor, and I really, really enjoyed being with the students. And I was a tutor in one of the learning support classes, and I really liked it. So I decided to change my focus and to do special education. So as I was learning about special education, just about the laws and everything, I was passing information on to my mother, because at the time Asia was in elementary school. And I was, when she got to a certain age, I said, Mom, when she turns 14, you got to make sure you ask about transition and what that plan is going to look like and all of that. So as I was learning, I was passing information on to my mother. And then as my mother, as she's being an advocate for my sister, she's learning about organizations that are helpful to her. So it's like I was learning like all the book stuff, and my mom was kind of learning the community services, and how the school was very helpful with connecting her with different I'll say agencies. So Asia going from elementary school, going to middle school, going to high school, and then even after school, I was like, Mom, like when she got to maybe, it was the year before she was graduating, I said, Mom, we got to figure out what she's going to do after high school. Like, where is she going? Like, we need to find a work placement for her. So my mom did, I'll say, a lot of that particular work. I went to every meeting with her. There were times I remember her having an IEP meeting. She went and signed it. She was like, well, my daughter needs to read this. And I'm like, Mom, advocate the same way you were with me. And I have older sisters, like, do the same thing. Like when we were in school, you advocated for us all the time. You always spoke up for us. You was always involved. Do the same thing, So I was basically, if my mom didn't understand something, I just explained to her what it was, what it means. And I also told my mom, my mother is big on relationships, and there were times I had to tell my mom, these people aren't your friends. And I said, I don't mean that to be rude, like you can't have that connection, but I said, you have to remember they're doing their job. And they may do something that you may not like. And it's not that they're doing it purposefully to hurt Asia or to hurt us. They're doing their job. And there's certain protocols they have to follow. There's certain things they have to do. And you may not agree with it. And it's not a shot at you or Asia. You may not like it. And I said, at the end of the day, you have to remember they are like, we're not like it's going to be maybe a few people where you're like, you know what? Even if they weren't working at this agency, they would still probably be involved in our lives. But I say you have to you always got to put Asia first and focus on her, because sometimes you can get caught up in the relationship you have with this person because they've been so supportive over the years. You're like, well, you know what? Because she could be late sending something in for Asia, and you may give her a pass, like, oh, she's busy. Yes, but this is her job to make sure she does X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
So that was very, difficult for my mother, because she's big on relationships, but I had to, share that with her. And I'll say it's been a big learning experience for my mother, as well as myself, because just watching Asia, and she's in a working placement now. So she's at a placement where there are other individuals there like her who have intellectual disabilities or other physical disabilities or learning disabilities, and they do like certain particular jobs. Someone is on site with them. They have lunch, she gets paid, she gets paid, she gets paid. Now, it's not like the way you and I, Asia, get paid for something, but she still gets paid. And she's very big on her routine. She knows she goes to work. We have paratransit come and pick her up because she's not at the capacity where she can travel in the community by herself. She's the type of person, you're driving, I'm trusting you to get me to my destination. And Asia has always been that way. Like, even if we ride to the mall, she's not paying attention to anything. You're driving, so you're getting me to my destination and back. So when one of the caseworkers was asking us, can she do set the week? It was so funny. Me and my mommy Nancy was like, no, like we said it at the same time.
Right.
Like, no, because if she gets lost, she can't tell us specifically where she is, or read the signs to know. So she gets paratransit to pick her up, to take her to work, and they bring her home. She has Medicare, so it pays for her gym membership at the Croc Center. So she goes to the Croc Center she has to have a certain amount of visits in order for the Medicare to continue to pay for it.
Right.
So she goes weekly. So we knew like she would definitely get that covered. So she goes, she does Zumba, she has her whole routine. People know her. She knows the Zumba routine. So there are times
And how old is Asia now?
believe it or not, Asa's gonna be 30 in August. She's 29.
Wow.
She's gonna be 30 in August. I can't believe it myself. But
Wow.
it's been a pleasure just watching her just grow, and just sharing my experience with ASEA has helped me to connect with my students' parents. So like when they know that, oh, I have a sibling that has a disability, it kind of brings them at ease sometimes if they're feeling some type of way, because I just relate to them. I'm like, listen, I understand. I said, actually, my sister's in a completely different, realm, because your child can actually do way more than what my sister can.
Wow.
So I always have that person. I've always had that personal connection with parents to just let them know
That relatability.
Right, that I can relate to them. I understand. And that has helped me in my career as well, because even just as I'm learning, it has helped me to just kind of think back to how I can support my sister, how I can support the parents of the students that I have in my classroom. Also, just from working with my sister, it has made me think of just what else can I do for my community. I took a writing course, not a writing course, excuse me. I went to a workshop that Sister Halima was having, the CEO of BUNHD. And while I was there, she said, it was like, if you could write a book, what would you write about? And I like to always just, when it's meaningful to me, I just feel like I can go all in. So I'm sitting there thinking like, what am I going to write about? And I just kept thinking about Asia. So I said, I'll write about how it was like growing up with her, because I've never read a story where it was a sibling sharing what their experience was. I've never read it. You always hear parents, guardians. And so that's what I did. And I named it because of her.
Yes, there it is.
This is my book. So yeah, it is on my website, www.becauseofher.info, and you can also get it on Amazon. So this is my self-published story, and it's a true story of what it was like growing up with my sister. And the cover just really that's just how we were growing up. Like that's just how we were. I was very protective of her. I felt that I had to be. I was very overprotective. I didn't trust people around her. I just felt that I didn't feel people had good intentions, because I know how sometimes people will do things
Take
to
advantage.
respond and take advantage. So I was very overprotective, and I talk about that in the story, because I don't think adults always understand that, yes, you may feel some type of way because your child has a disability, but do you think about the siblings, like how they feel, you know what I mean? Just how they feel about it as well. Like the amount of pressure they may feel. Like I felt pressure to make sure she was safe. I felt pressure to make sure nobody bothered her. I felt pressure to just make sure she was okay at all times. And so I was always on edge when we went outside. I couldn't relax when I was outside. So if anybody said anything, like
you was on it. You was like, oh, excuse me.
You talking about going to that dark place you don't want to go. Like I immediately went there, because I'm like, I know she didn't say anything to you to make you respond to her the way you did. So it's me and my sister. I remember at one point, her caseworker, they were looking to see if maybe she could change work environments, like maybe do like a fresh grocer or something. And my sister was like, no, because if one of those customers says something to her, my job is right down the street. I'm gonna walk. You know what I mean?
That's gonna be a problem, right?
That's just how we are. We was like, listen, we don't have time for that. No, she needs her support at her job. So I talk about that in the story, just how it was growing up, how there was a time when she was getting evaluated, and the psychologist was saying, oh, she's going to need a one of those devices to communicate, and she can't do this and can't do that. And alhamdulillah, my mother spoke up to say, no, my daughter can do all this, and she took me with her.
So that's what I want to. You said so much, and I'm relating, because as I mentioned in the onset, I have a child. He has Asperger's, and so there's challenges that come with that in the school system, and you know, and you mentioned something, and one of our followers, she wrote a comment, and Sister Nadira Yasin, she said that, talking about your mom, you know, nurturing relationships and making it hard for her to be able to be like that ambassador for her child. um I didn't necessarily have that problem. You know, I felt like, you know, I have to speak up. I have to be the voice for my child. And so you mentioned, I love the way you said that you were like, you have to advocate for your child. And I think that that's such an important thing for parents to understand, that if you do it for any of your other children who don't have it, it's even more so with your child who has special needs, who cannot speak for themselves, to be able to say, you know, no, this is not okay, or there's another alternative. You know,
Right.
yes, you're suggesting this. And I love the fact that you mentioned that they'll make you know, this protectiveness when as it relates to siblings. That's how my daughter and my son were with, and they're younger. My child with Asperger's, he's the oldest, and yet the younger kids felt like they had to protect him because he was bullied. You know, and so they felt like they had to protect him. And my daughter was like mother hen, like she was like, don't nobody say nothing to my brother. You know, she jumped in like that. So I love the fact that you gave a different narrative to special needs, and sometimes it's the siblings that get forgotten, you know, that are often forgotten in that whole, you know, journey of working with a child, or being, you know, living with a child with special needs. And I'm very careful to say struggle, because people say, you know, we struggle with a child, and I feel like no, it's living with special needs. They're still living, they're still existing, you know, they still have a life. And as you mentioned, you know, they told my son the same thing. He wasn't going to graduate. He wasn't going to this. My son graduated top 10 in his class, honor roll. Okay, so I know exactly what you mean when you say that, you know, they'll tell you one thing, but you know your child. So I would love for you to speak to that, because I saw a lot of, you know, a lot of comments, as I mentioned, you know, were saying, I'm guilty of that. How would you encourage parents to be advocates for their children, especially if they're like the sole voice and everybody else? And being in, if anyone has been in an IEP meeting, it's you and a group of all these professionals. Yeah, it can be intimidating.
Yes,
Yes.
it can. For me, like, again, for parents, I always built rapport with parents. And that's just something I do with students. I try to build the same rapport with parents, not on a, oh, we're friends. Just no, you ever have a question, you ever need anything, email me, and I'll get back to you in my earliest convenience. I always tell parents that all the time. Email me. It doesn't matter what your question is. You know, just ask. It's not a problem. I always call parents way prior to meetings just to let them know, do you have any questions, to get input from them, just so they know when I'm getting ready to, like, say their child is getting close to that age where we have to start transition. Like, I call parents and we have a whole conversation about it, and we talk about it. And I say, listen, if you have any questions about something, you know, just ask me. So I always make parents feel comfortable to ask me whatever they feel they need to ask me. But as far as just parents in general, my thing is always document who you talk to, who you spoke with. Make sure you know who is on your child's team, because you are a member of the IEP team, and always know you are one of the, you're the second most important, because your child is the first important person on the team, and you are the second most important person on that team. So always know that, and always know that if you're not okay with something, it's fine. Speak up, because if you're not okay with that, then we have to figure out what else we can do. Or if it's something where we have the data to support, I think is really beneficial that your child has this and you see the data to support it. That helps parents to yay or nay, whatever it is. Because just because the IEP is written out, if it's an initial IEP, meaning it's the very first one, if you don't agree with it, we can't move forward with anything. If it's an annual, if you don't agree with it, it's a certain process you have to follow, because some parents think, well, if I don't sign the no rep, then this is not gonna happen. And it's like, no, you got to read that fine print. It's very small. And it tells you, no, you have to check off if you want to do due process, if you want to do mediation, like you have to make sure you pay attention to that. So you are very important. And to use your voice, I would say always communicate through email, because that documents the time you sent it.
Who you spoke with.
Who you spoke with, if you call someone on the phone, I always suggest to parents, get a book, a notebook,
Like a log.
book, or you can get a journal book, and this way you can log the date, the time, who you spoke with. At the beginning of the year, it's okay for you to request a meeting to meet with your child's team. It doesn't, it's not an annual IEP meeting. You can have an informal meeting with all the teachers and and whoever is supporting your child. I've had parents do that. One particular year I had a girl, she had a disorder where she would never get full. So we had to pay attention to her at lunchtime to make sure she did not overeat. So her mom did a meeting with all of us so that way we would know to look
what
out
to look for, right?
And she, she clearly said, if you see her eating other food other than what's in her lunchbox, please call me. Please let me know and tell me what it was that she was eating. And then at the end of the year, I always would do like a little party type thing, cake and ice cream, whatever. I called her parents like in advance. I said, this is the brand of ice cream. This is cupcakes. This is what we're having. What can she have? Because I want her to be included. So I made sure out to the parent, for that. So definitely have a log. And I would say definitely get like a 3-ring binder, maybe 3-inch, and keep physical copies of your child's IEP in there. So that way,
that's what I did.
You always want to have a physical copy of it.
That's what I did.
Because so that way you can see, are they recycling goals? Do they keep using the same goals? So you can also track progress as well, and also get an electronic copy, because that's something you can share with your child's primary care physician. If your child gets services outside of school, you can share that IEP with a provider that is outside of the school. I've had parents ask me, can you send me a copy of the IEP or whatever? And I'm like, sure, I'll send you the IEP or whatever. So definitely just make sure you document everything. And always, I just did, this was just my practice. I always sent my IEP draft like 2 days prior to my meeting, and I would have parents, and then my email, I would say, well, this is the recommendation. Please look over the draft. If you have any questions and you want to talk to me prior to the meeting, we can do that. So that way, when we get to the meeting, I already know what your questions were, and we can, just
address it.
Progress the meeting. And then I had some parents who they would bring the IEP with them. It was already marked up, which is great. I want you to mark it up. I want you to put tabs on it if you didn't understand something or if you found an error in it. Do that. And you as a parent, you can request that you get a draft sent home prior to the meeting. If they give you a meeting time that does not accommodate your schedule, you can ask for them to change that day and that day and time.
Right.
To accommodate your schedule. And I think sometimes parents get afraid to speak up and ask. And it's like, well, no, like, again, myself, I always call parents first to say, okay, what days are you free? Do you need a morning? Do you need an afternoon meeting?
Right.
And then I'll go from there.
And that's such a good point, because I know, with me, I was a single mom. And so I couldn't just readily take off work. So it was really important that, they understood that I can only come in on my day off, and they worked with me. And that's so true. When you let them know I'm unable to take off that day, or, have childcare issues, they are usually very receptive to saying, okay, well, what day works for you? And then they try to regroup everyone and get everyone involved, keep them all in the same email. So I think that is so important. To speak out and not feel like if you miss this meeting or you can't attend this meeting, they can't reschedule another one. So yeah, that's a very important point.
Very, very. I tell her, it's just speak up, like just get to the point and say, listen, like, just keep your kid,
the top focus
of everything. So I've had parents that say, sure, I'm so sorry. I'm like, listen, I understand. And as a teacher, as an educator, when I was in a classroom, I learned to not take it personal, because as an educator, you can take it personal, because the job of an educator, you wear so many hats. So when a parent if a parent responds to you a certain way, you may come off like, it may not be that parent is upset with you. They may just be frustrated because of the whole process, just everything to go through. And it took me some years to get to that point. Like, don't take it personal.
You didn't take it personal.
Yeah.
You bring up a great point, and I think especially now, I mean, just having a special needs child, and I'm so happy I'm seeing moms. Nadir is commenting. I know some other of my friends, they said they were coming on because they have, children with autism, and I think they're signed on. I saw, little notifications coming in. And I've heard the conversations, I've been part of the conversations where this whole coronavirus, COVID-19, and social distancing and quarantine, and parents having to make the choices of sending their children back to school or having them learn virtually, a lot of their parents have a valid, fear of sending their children to school. However, it's already challenging enough, with keeping up with meetings and, learning different techniques of how to teach your child and bring out the best in them. Well, COVID that's taken now that challenge to a whole nother level. So what suggestions, Jamilah, can you give or can you provide the parents who have children with special needs or are considered classified? Because even, I mean, I have stepchildren now that are still in school, and I have friends and their kids sign on, and it's like they turn the camera off and they done zoomed out, or whatever you call it. And that's kids who don't have that. So what suggestions could you give parents who children who have, it's already, something that they're dealing with? How can parents assist them and not feel overwhelmed, as you was mentioning, and feeling just frustrated?
First thing I would say is to try to keep your child on the same schedule routine. Like when COVID first hit, I immediately reached out to my parents. I said, listen, if you need help with something, you need me to make a schedule for you, let me know. It's like when
You're
it hit,
such a good daughter.
I have, what do I do? And what did I do? I'm like, and for me, I'm like, just follow their schedule, follow their regular. They can tell you this time I have this class and this time I have this class, but it also allowed our students, our children to take advantage, because it's like, oh, my mom don't know this, my dad don't know this. Oh yeah, I'm gonna pretend I can't connect, even though I know I can connect.
Right.
And I'll say that's the biggest hurdle to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But for the parents that I had, I was just saying, like, I made a schedule for them. I said, follow the same schedule that they would if they were in school. And
So that includes bedtime. That includes bedtime.
Include everything like on that schedule, like literally write it out for yourself and write it out for your child, so they've been on a routine. They eat breakfast they may catch the school bus, or they're used to you driving at a certain time, so you may say, okay, we're not driving anywhere, but you're going to eat breakfast at this time, and then you're going to get on a computer, you're going to go to your advisory at this time. Like, you literally have to
keep them on that schedule,
on a routine, because that's what they're used to, especially students who have an IEP. They're used to a routine, especially if the child who has several needs, they need that routine.
I know that's to be true, Jamilah, because when my son, one of the things that would throw him off was when he wasn't on a routine. It was like if he was on a routine, he knew what to expect. That's when he thrived. When you gave him something new, it took him a while to adjust. So what do you say to parents, though? I mean, they were on a routine, but they were at school, so the teachers kept them on this routine. For parents who have to go to work now and are not able to be at home, and they're leaving their siblings like yourself to kind of take that role, what suggestions can you give to parents, when it has to become a whole family affair now?
I would say first thing is to have a family meeting, honestly, because it's going to take the whole family to help in this particular situation. Whether if you have maybe your sister come over, aunt, uncle come over, or you trust a particular neighbor because you both have children and you guys alternate or something. Whoever is going to be in your village to support this online virtual learning, you definitely should have a family meeting and say, this is how it's going to be. And again, include your schedule, when they're taking breaks, when they're going to have their lunch, and then follow your same routine as if when school had ended. Do the same
homework, right?
Homework time, when you're having dinner time, and also give kids a break. They've been on a computer for a very
right.
Yes. Some parents want to go, okay, right after going to this, and it's like, give them a break. Just like you need a break from the computer, they need a break as well. Now, for students who have IEPs, I highly suggest for parents, and even if your child don't have an IEP, to find out, well, what is going to be the platform that they're going to be educated on. In my last district, it was Canvas. I know a lot of schools have been using Google Classroom. When COVID first hit, we were already using Google Classroom, so my students didn't have to pick up anything new. We used it every single day, so they were already used to it. But then the following year, we started using Canvas, and I had a love-hate relationship with it. It was definitely the schools have like they would have like little sessions for parents. They had it for teachers. So like definitely take advantage and figure out, well, what is the platform that's going to be used, so that way you know how to utilize it. So you can include your email, you can get the summaries if your child did work or if they didn't do work. I had to explain to my class, listen, don't pay attention to the grades on Canvas, pay attention to the grades in Skyward. That's what you're used to. So pay attention to that, because it's hard putting grades in two places. Also, what I did as well, we had office hours. So I would email the parents and say, okay, here are my office hours for this particular subject. And then I had some parents who they're like, Miss Bashir, it's not working. I can't, it's not, they were honest, like, Miss Bashir, you have a special gift. It's not working for me. And there were one kid, every day at 10 o'clock, he would come onto my Zoom and I would go together, because he would just not do his work. And every day in English was the area where he struggled. So every day, 10 o'clock, he would come on, and I literally would just sit there and watch him. And it's just, he needed to be able to ask me questions, and he needed to know that he's on the right track, which is what I would do in the classroom. He could do all that. Like one time he just put, I don't know for everything. I don't know. I'm like, yes, you do know that. And we got to, we laughed. You know this. And it's just, he just needed me to be on the same Zoom as him so he could ask me questions. I did a lot. I recorded myself going through some of the resources we used in school, saving the videos and putting it on the Google Classroom for the parents. And I had a title was called Parent Resources. And I would say, okay, we use this add-on in Classroom. So I had that there, and I had one parent email me and said, Miss Bashir,
that's it.
Video, and that's what, every time me and my co-teacher posted an assignment, I did the videos. She would I did the videos and I did all the accommodations for everything, but then she also would use my videos for her other classes where there weren't any IEP students, but it was helpful. So I was recording myself a lot. So even though we've done certain assignments before, some kids act like they never did it before. And then, parents are like, well, how do you do this? And it's like, okay, well, there's a video connected with it. So it helps parents to help their kids. And that was the only thing I'll say, that was the biggest thing I'll say saved me. I'll say a lot of aggravation is I was just like, I got to record myself doing this. I'm not there.
So, I mean, you have it. It's clear. I mean, we've been talking now for about 30 minutes, and it is clear. Anyone listening, Jamilah, you have a gift. You have a gift. You have that natural instinct, and I'm sure it comes from with your sister and everything like that. Bless her heart. I mean, I'm sure that comes from it, and just who you are as a person. Would you suggest, if there are teachers that are not recording, any educators that are listening, and for parents, would you suggest that parents make the suggestion to the teachers that may not be recording, and it could be very helpful to them?
And it really depends on that teacher's style, because they may differentiate the lesson so well they don't need to do a video. But a lot of times, I don't know, I'll say from middle school up, we tend to use a lot of videos anyway because it's very helpful. But I definitely would encourage teachers. I even encouraged the instructional aides I worked with. They reached out to me, and just was saying, Miss, I'm having trouble with this. And I was like, oh, have you recorded yourself doing it? She's like, I never thought about doing that. I'm like, yeah, definitely. Because I said, it'll just help parents. It really helps, because parents have, some parents don't have the patience for their own children. And we can be honest about that. Some don't.
And that's true.
It's like, they're like, I got to do what? And then even
we have a threshold. It's like, I have patience up until 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Anything over that is over, right? So,
the kid is like, she helping me, he helping me, and it's
Right.
you know,
And you see it in their face, right?
just being honest, but the videos are, it was just my saving grace for me to help parents to help their children. It was like the only thing I knew, because I'm like, for me to try to explain this over the phone and then maybe they're looking at what I'm looking at. I was just like, no, I was just like, oh, I just gotta make a video. And I'll say from COVID till when COVID closed, like when it first hit in March, all the way on, I was just doing videos for everything.
Video.
And then we started using a different platform, so for Canvas. So, and then we started doing more live teaching, so it was very different. There was no need for me to have to do the video so much, because we recorded our lessons and we just
Right.
saved it and we just posted. But when COVID first hit, making those videos saved me. And I'll say
Right.
parents were very appreciative of it. They appreciated that I made on the Google Classroom. It was just parent resources, because it was just basically all the things that we have used in class. Here, this is what I used. You know, I already knew, like, it was certain programs that my students used because they had needs. And
Right.
it was just like, I don't think the parents have this on their computer at home. Here is how you
Right.
add it to your computer. Like, I would have to uninstall it on my computer and record myself installing it back onto
That's
my
wonderful.
computer.
Wow.
And know how to use it.
So that brings me to the next question. So you just segued right into it perfectly. You know, I mean, I think, you know, teachers, they give suggestions, and, you know, parents are doing their absolute best. And, you know, they may be hitting that frustration point, or feeling like it's not working. What resources are out there, you know, for those that are listening during these times, that, you know, parents can download on their computer that you use, or that other educators use, that they may not be aware are out there to assist them?
I would say first, reach out to your child's teacher, because they can tell you exactly what resources they use, if it's free, if it costs money. They can tell you exactly where to go. I recently did that for a student at my school. Google has an add-on called Read and Write, where it basically will, if you highlight it, it'll read it back to you. And I use it a lot in writing class. And I have one kid, his parents actually bought a subscription of it. So as he's typing, it speaks what he's typing as he's typing it. The free version doesn't do that, but it reads it back to you. And if you're on the internet and you use the Read and Write, it'll read that article to you as well. So it was just, I recorded myself to show the parent how it works. And then I said, okay, here is the link. Here are subscriptions if you want to pay for it, whatever. The teacher your child's teachers, math teacher, you want math resources, reach out to the math. Whoever teaches your child, reach out to them, because they can tell you everything.
What resources are out there, right?
Because us teachers, we like free stuff. So we don't want to have to cost you any money. You know, it's free stuff. And the add-on, Nadira, is called, it's a Google add-on. So you got to have Chrome on your computer, and the colorful dots in the upper left-hand corner, you type in Read and Write. So READ and A&D, Write, WRITE, and that'll pop up. And that's the name of that add-on. Definitely the teachers.
Say it one more time, Jamilah. What's the add-on?
It's Read and Write, READ and A&D, Write, WRITE. And you'll see a purple puzzle piece appear with it. That's how you know it's the right add-on. But how did I find that out? The occupational therapist told me it was something she was using, and I just started passing on. I was like, oh, you know, passing on to my colleagues. Do you guys use Read and Write? Like your related service providers that service your child, they can tell you programs that are out there. I've learned again, I'm big on, I really establish relationships with the team of people that I work with. So I was the emotional support teacher at my school. So myself, the counselor, guidance counselors, occupational therapists, we work closely together, and especially myself and the counselor, because all my students got group counselor or individual counselor. So I work very closely with her. I work closely with behavior specialists. So they would tell me just other things that I would pass on to parents or pass on to my other colleagues. Reach out to the guidance counselor at your child's school. They can tell you of a lot of resources in your community or in the county that you live in. They can tell you, oh, you can go here there's a food bank here. Or, oh, you don't have medical insurance? Here, you can go here for this type of support that can help you. In Pennsylvania, we have intermediate units. You can definitely, depending on what county you live at in Pennsylvania, your intermediate unit they have a lot of supports for special education and those who require services for special education. Of course, depending on the county you live in, some counties are better than others. Montgomery County is better than Delaware County. So, it really depends on where you live. But definitely, I think some people get so frustrated with their school. Sometimes they don't really realize that it's so much in the school. And it's people that can really, really help you and connect you with agencies in your community. And again, get a relationship, or even if you don't have a relationship with your child's team, know who they are and reach out to them. Reach out to your child's teachers, because I promise you, they have so many different websites, so many different programs that can help your child.
Right.
So definitely.
That is wonderful. I mean, I wish I would have known you when my son was going to school, because I'm sure there were additional resources that obviously I didn't even tap into because I just didn't ask,
Right.
So
and also, like, my supervisor, she would email all the SPAD teacher stuff that was happening in the community, and she would say, "Oh, pass on to parents." I promise you, you may not like your child's teacher, you may not like your child's case manager, but I promise you, they have a lot
of answers,
that they can send you. Like, every time my supervisor would send me something, I would just send to parents, just a FYI, in case you're interested. There was things going on in the summertime, just in case you're interested. I'm just passing it on. So definitely reach out.
Right. Well, I have another question. I mean, I'm loving this conversation, and I think the audience is enjoying it too. I'm getting a plethora of information, which this is really great. What can the school districts, like you were just talking about different counties, and depending on what county you belong to, some are more forthcoming, or just more helpful than others. What can the school districts provide that many are not even aware of? Sometimes they just have stuff out there that people just, it's like it's always been there. It's on the school district site or something like that. Is there anything in particular, or are there a few things in particular that you're aware of that parents may not know, and it's their actual right? They don't even know it's a right of their child.
You hit it right on the nail. The school district website. People don't like to read, so people won't go on the website to read. Schools are required to post services and resources that are available to parents. If your child has an IEP, if your child does not have an IEP, there's so much on the school district website. You just got to pay attention and find, just pay attention and get to it. When it comes to special education, schools have to give your child FAPE, a free appropriate public education, no matter what. So even if COVID hit, your child is still required a free appropriate public education. If your child, and I'm not wishing COVID on anyone, but if your child happens to contract COVID, your child still has to get a free appropriate public education. So there has to be a meeting where we're going to say, well, how are we going to educate your child? Obviously, it would have to be, virtual. It have to be online. But no matter what, you and your child has a right to a public education. I don't think parents are aware that if, let's say, your child is supposed to get, let's say, speech or whatever, and they're not getting their speech, if the school does not create a plan on how to make up that lost time, you have the right to compensatory services. Parents don't always know that. They might say, "Oh,
wait, rewind. They have rights to what?
Compensatory services." So if your child has a related service, speech, OT, counseling, and let's say for a month they didn't get anything, if the school does not create a plan to make up that time, you have the right to compensatory services for that. But a lot of parents sometimes will say, well, oh, it must be COVID, or it must be this. No matter what,
right,
you your child still has to get those services. So like when COVID hit, for my school, everything went online. So we had to communicate with parents to tell them we're doing it online. We're going to do speech online. We're going to do counseling online. Now, of course, it took more work on our part because we have to call you to remind, like we would call and remind you. And then like sometimes parents say, well, you didn't get my kid. We would have our documentation to say, actually, we did. We called you at this time. We messaged your child at this time. I had the communication I always will remind my students, don't forget
documentation.
Right. You have counseling tomorrow at this time. Like, because when they were in the building, they will get a pass and their advisor like the day before.
Right.
And so they would know to come to my room for group counseling. And so we had to I was helping the counselor when COVID hit. I'm helping the counselor reach out to kids and I'm like, use this email, use this phone number.
Right.
You have the right to that. Also, some parents don't know that they can use their FMLA to go to IEP meetings. And depending on your job, if you work for an employer that has 500 employees or less, you can get FMLA to stay home, to get time to do
work with your child.
The virtual learning with your child. Now, will your pay be the same? No, not 100%, but
it is an option.
It's an option out there, but a lot of parents don't know that. A lot of parents don't know that you can use your FMLA to go to an IEP meeting. You know what I mean? Because I would have some parents, they would say, well, I'm off at this time, and I will always get copies of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if they had to go back to work, I'll always copy the invitation for them so that their job know they actually came to an IEP. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. And this is stuff that I post on my Instagram. I posted on my business page, my business Facebook page. And also this is what kind of bridged me into creating the IEP coach.
That was what you just keep segueing right into what I was just about to ask, because I was like, we just had a comment from Khadija. Khadija says such good information, and she was talking about how wonderful you are, and I agree with you, Khadija. And she said, may Allah bless all of your efforts. Ameen. And so what I wanted to know for those that are listening, they're listening and hearing all of this great information that you're giving. They may not have that type of relationship with their team, and they may just need some assistance maybe on how to do that. So I wanted to ask you, what are your services that you offer with the IEP Coach LLC for those that are interested in maybe taking your services?
Sure. So I'm going to tell you how I came about to creating the IEP Coach, and then I'm going to go into, what I do. So when I published my book, because of her,
get that book.
I published my book. From there, I had never did a live on Instagram or nothing, and I never get Amina Muhammad Dig, and she was like, you should do some live.
You got all my friends on there, okay.
Tips, and I was so nervous, but I did. It was such a great response. I started doing videos, and also I was just going off of the questions I always got from parents at my job when I would have IEP meetings, and I was just like, okay, I think I can turn this into a business. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, well, what am I going to call myself? I didn't know what it was. First of all, I didn't know what type of work this was. And then it hit me like, you're consulting. Like, this is consultations. And
thank you. And you can monetize that.
Consultations. I was like, okay. I said, what am I going to call myself? Mm-hmm. And I was just like, okay, you do SPED. SPED is your passion. That's what you know about the IEP. So I was like, okay, IEP has to be in it. And then as I was watching just other people do things, I was like, that's kind of like a coach. I was like, call yourself the IEP coach. And then I remember I text my friends. I said, how does this sound? The IEP
coach. It sounds good.
And I was like, okay. And then when I was thinking of a name for my business, I was like, well, I don't want to call it because of her. That's my book. And that's also what I named my nonprofit. I was just like, and
wait, hold up. You got a nonprofit too? You didn't tell me that.
Yes, I'm gonna get to that. So my friend was like, why don't you call it the IEP Coach?
Right.
Like, just call it that, and you are the IEP coach. Right. So I was like, oh, okay, great. So then when anytime I post up, I'll put hashtag Jamilah the IEP coach. I would put that on things, and I started putting that on things. I got a logo and everything like that. And I started just consulting, like parent,
Yeah.
you can go to my website. You can go to my www.becauseofher.info. You can also access it through my Facebook page, which is the IEP Coach LLC, and also my Instagram page, which is at the IEP Coach LLC. And it will take you to my website so you can schedule consultations with me. Basically, it can be just a casual conversation and you just sharing what your needs are, and I'm giving you tips and I'm giving you recommendations. I review documents, so if you want me to review it and give you my opinion, or if you want to together, you want me to explain the IEP to you or an evaluation to you and you're not sure, I do that. I also created a course where I teach parents how to interpret an IEP. I literally go from an IEP from beginning to end.
That is so empowering.
Interpret, because it's very intimidating. You don't always get someone who will be, I'll say, who will care enough to explain it to you, because again, as an educator, especially if you teach in Philadelphia or you teach in an inner city, you have a huge caseload and it is very overwhelming. When I was in Philadelphia, I had a caseload of 24 kids. And it was very overwhelming. I had 24 students on my caseload. So it's like you get after IEP. Okay, I got this meeting. Okay, you're on to the next kid. And it's not that you don't care. It's just you're like, in your mind.
You have limited time.
I tell you is dates going. Like I'm like, okay, I got this kid in this month. I got this many in this month. Like that's just how our brains are going. So it's not necessarily we did not care or anything. It's just we have so much to do. So it's like you're overwhelmed and no one may not explain it to you, especially at that initial IEP meeting.
Right.
And you're like, this document, you may feel some type of way that your child has it. You may feel like, what did I do to make my child get an IEP? Did I do something wrong?
Jamilah, you're about to make girl stop. You're about to make me cry, because that is so true.
And I had a parent, she broke down at the meeting, and it was, when I tell you, it was alhamdulillah, her child had a disability. I shared my story. I talked about my sister, the psychologist, her daughter has autism, and then her advocate that was with her, she had a child that had a disability, and I just explained to her, this is not for the rest of your child's life. Please don't think it's for the rest of your life. They may need it just for 2 years. It's just support for them, and it definitely depends on where your child is in their education, like what school they go to, what district they go to, because everybody does it different. Some schools have various placements where they have co-taught classes, they have learning support classes, but everybody's together. So it's not like, this is a learning support classroom. But you can go to some schools and you have some teachers like, oh, this is your kid. Oh, it's time for you to go to Miss Bashir. It's time. And it's like, no, these are our kids. Like, I'm quite sure this kid knows he has an IEP. Please don't single him out. Like anytime I would do stuff, I never would do anything that was singled. I always did things discreetly. So I would give something to you. It looks like I'm giving everybody the same thing, but I may not be giving everybody the same thing.
Right.
Giving out a green piece of paper. Everybody has green paper, but his green paper is a little different to help him complete the assignment. You know what I mean? So everybody is not going to maybe be that heartfelt and caring. So I was just like, I'm always getting questions about these IEPs. I've had parents say, thank you so much. This is the first time someone went through this document with me. And I'm looking like, this is the 3rd year your kid had an IEP. And I'm
it's real. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, because you did get me teary-eyed, but I put it I held it together. Reading that, just having an emotion about your child, being considered quote unquote classified, or having to be on IEP, having to have accommodations made. So we have some questions here that goes right into what you're talking about. So I definitely want you to be able to answer some of the questions. So the first question is from my friend, Nafisa. She wrote, Assalamu alaikum, sisters. Alhamdulillah, this is great information. What would you suggest be the most appropriate chain to go through when the teacher, counselor, and principal doesn't respond to your parent emails?
Oh, okay. This is where you need to start CCing other people on there. Because I even do this myself as an educator. If my principal does not, when my principal won't respond to me, I would
Mm-hmm.
CC my supervisor. I would CC other supervisors. I would CC the other principals in my building because somebody you need to respond to this. So I would definitely see who is the director of special education of that school, of that, if you're in like a network of charter schools or if you're in a district, see who the director of, because it's like they may look at that and say, why is this parent emailing me? So I would still email who
Mm-hmm.
you're emailing, but I would
CC everyone.
CC the director, I would CC the guidance counselor at the
Counselor.
school, I would CC just all of them, because those are the people that's going to help you. Even if you have even some outside services for your child, I will put them on the email too, so they just know,
Mm.
look, I have other people that support me.
Eyes are on you. You need to respond.
I mean, because I do this, I used to do that as an educator all the time, and I never forget, my supervisor would say, oh, you don't have to send that to everybody. I was like, oh, I would play dumb like I didn't know that. I knew that, but I did it
Right.
all
But I did it on purpose. Right.
the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or I remember my principal, I used to have to literally put help me. Like I would put that in caps in the subject because I needed him to respond. Like I need you,
That's right.
like I would do that, but definitely CC people. And if you want to even CC your superintendent, you can put your superintendent email on that too.
Mm.
They'll get annoyed that they're being contacted about something that the school needs to be handling. So CC people on other people on that email you're sending to the principal, and if they're not responding, CC other people on there too. And then
Right.
if that doesn't work, I do recommend you seeking counsel. There are, depending on where you are in your community, there may be advocacy groups that can help you as well. You can do a Google search in your area for advocacy groups, because there are advocacy agencies out there that will support you to get what
Mm-hmm.
you need for your child at your school. And then sometimes you do have to seek legal counsel because,
Yeah.
sometimes they want to give you the runaround, or sometimes they want to tell you what they're going to do for your kid, and it's okay to speak. Like you could say, no,
Advocate.
my
Advocate.
child
Right.
has the right to have da 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 da. They require these services. They need to get these services. Or I remember I had one parent. She said, Miss Bashir, is it possible for us to decrease counseling, because she didn't want to have her daughter having so much counseling to the point where she got it in school, she got it at home, and she was getting intense counseling outside of school. And she said, well, Miss Bashir, I think it would be too much if we did counseling in school.
More. Right.
And I said, absolutely. And because it was not changing her special education time, I just went and removed it. I made a blurb about, I contacted mom on this date, this time, this phone number. We spoke about blah, 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 to remove so and so services. So that way she wasn't being, I'll say, over serviced.
Right. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we have one more question from Khadija. Khadija wrote, can you talk about accommodations and what is the difference between that and IEP?
Okay, so accommodations, I'm gonna tell you the difference between an accommodation and a modification, because people use them interchangeably and are not the same thing. So an accommodation is what you do to allow a child to have access to what you're trying to teach them. So you're basically giving them accessing the education and instruction in a different way. So for example, an accommodation would be, okay, if he's taking a test, some accommodations will be, okay, I'm going to give him a break when he's taking his test. I'm going to enlarge the print so he can see it when he's taking a test. I may have him take it in the morning instead of him taking it in the afternoon. I will read the questions out loud for him because he can comprehend the questions more.
That's what my son needed. Yeah.
Right. I will give him a small group environment so that way it's not so many students in the room. So you're basically doing things to help your child, to help a child access their education. So those are accommodations, and they may need accommodations for their education. They may need accommodations for only when they take a test. So it may not be for everything. And those are just some examples. Oh, another example could be, oh, they get graphic organizers every time they have to write an essay, or for any writing assignment, you got to give them a graphic organizer. So that's just access. When you do a modification, you make a change to it so that the student can understand it. So for example, if I modify a test, let's say the test had, it's basically constructive response questions. So they're open-ended questions. I may look at it and see, okay, which questions are the main content questions. I'll take those questions and I'll turn them into multiple choice questions.
Voice questions.
Into fill in the blank questions. I'll turn them into matching. I'll turn them into something where I give them a word bank and he has to fill in that information. So modifications, you're making a change to something, whereas accommodation, you're just giving them a different way of understanding and a different way of accessing their education. So with an IEP, that's an individualized education plan. The IEP consists of the goals your child is going to work on for the year and what accommodations they need in order to achieve those goals.
Right.
So accommodations will include testing accommodations or accommodations in a classroom. Now, some may be specific to say modified tests. My child needs modified math tests or modified science tests. My child needs the textbook. My child can't do the textbook online. They need a physical textbook. Things like that. Those are accommodations that you can do. So at the IEP meeting, the team will give you their recommendations of accommodations. And then you can also say, can we do this? Or can you add this to an IEP? Now, what I say for parents, focus on what your child needs, not what you want. Because what you want is not always what your child needs. Because some people say, well, I want this on the IEP and I want this. And it's like, is that really conducive to their education? Is it necessary? Because we don't want to enable our children to the point where they're relying on this. They're relying on this IEP. They're enabled by the services in our IEP, and that's not what we're trying to do, because eventually you do want to fade out services, fade out accommodations. And my goal was to always make my students as independent as they can be. So they're
like your sister.
Yes, and she is as independent as she can be. And there were a lot of times my students would come to me, ask me a question, and I would answer the question with the question, because I'm like, I'm not doing it. I will help you do what you need to do, but I'm not doing it. I'm not. And I've had, again, I did emotional support. So I had students get mad at me sometimes because they felt that I wasn't helping them. I'm like, you got to help yourself. I'm going to read that question for you. I'm not giving you the answer.
Right. I love the fact that you said that. And I don't know if this is something that the viewers have had experience with, but I know when, it hit me hard because we didn't diagnose, my son was not diagnosed until he was almost in high school. And so there was a lot of guilt that I felt about certain things because I didn't know, right? And but once I found out, did my research, read books, had a therapist that helped me. I was able to really say, okay, my child may have special needs, but I communicated special to my son, not in a negative way, but that he was just, really special. It took a special person to get him.
I had that connotation with it because that's what because special education has had such a negative connotation for so many years. I understand why some parents are just like, nope, I don't want that. I was just, and then it's like, just because you get your child evaluated, it doesn't mean you have to accept that IEP. You don't have to accept it.
Right. No, because they wanted to recommend medication for my son. And I was like, no, we're not doing that here.
Exactly. And Netflix had it was a documentary called Take Your Pills. And it was just on medicating. And they focused on Adderall. They focused on Adderall because that's what a lot of people that have ADHD tend to take. Adderall because it helps them focus.
Or Ritalin. That's what they wanted to give my son.
I'm not a huge advocate for medication. However, I've seen how it has helped those children that have severe cases of like I had a kid. When I tell you he has severe ADHD, it was severe. He couldn't even get through an assignment. And I never forget, there were times he would break down crying because he would try.
He was frustrated.
Like he would get frustrated with himself because he couldn't. Like with him, he said, I would sit him near my sharpener. I sat him near the trash can. I sat him near everything so he wouldn't have to keep getting up. I would randomly say, oh, go to the bathroom. He would say, I don't have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, I know, you need to get up and move. Like, it was just things I would have to do like that. Go to the water fountain. I'm not thirsty. I understand that. Go walk to the water fountain, because he needed to move. But he struggled really, really
So in those severe situations, medication may be an option. But if it's not, and you know that it's just an accommodation or modification, then advocate for that.
Absolutely. Like really look at what the needs of your kid, of your child is. Like really look at the needs. Are the needs behavioral support? Are the needs an academic support? Also look into, people don't even realize your child's diet plays a huge role in.
I had to change. Yes, you are saying everything I had to do. Yeah.
Like if you're constantly feeding your child processed food, it affects them.
Sugar.
If they don't have any extracurricular activities where they can just get that extra energy out, you really got to make sure what you're feeding your kids. Even looking into herbal supplements, and if you go that route, you have to make sure you're consistent with it. Just like if you take vitamins, you know how you feel if you forget to take it versus when you do take it. So you have to make sure it's in their system and watch the food that they eat. A lot of parents don't pay attention to the foods that they put in their child, and even what they're drinking, because a lot of these drinks have a lot of sugar in it. And parents don't understand that it plays a role in their
huge role. Yeah.
Because even as an adult, you know how you feel after you eat certain foods, and when you eat clean, or if you took out carbs from your diet, if you took out just sugar from your diet,
absolutely,
water, it affects you.
It does. It makes a difference. There's one more question. I don't know if the parents are going through this, but sometimes, you as the parent or the parents, you become very educated and you have this thing going on with the teachers and I mean, everything is flowing. And then you got grandma and you got aunties and they don't quite see it. They want to baby your child and they want to, no, they are not capable of doing, because I had to deal with that. And I had to sit down with my mom and like, no, he's more than capable. How do you have that conversation without offending, family members? Because they are well-intended. They really are.
They really want the best for your kid.
You laughing, it brought back memories.
It's funny. Like I've had parents, they'll bring I had one parent, she brought her mother-in-law, she brought the mobile therapy. And when I tell you, it was a whole team of people that came to this meeting, I'm just like, what the heck is going on here? But you really got to have a heart-to-heart conversation with family members, because sometimes we give too much help. And it's like, okay, they're not going to do it because they know you're going to do it for them.
Exactly.
Basically showing them how it'll be a detriment to your child because you're not going to be around all the time. And he or she has to be able to use those strategies that they've learned to cope in their situations. So like, even in the classroom, like when something, again, I was dealing with emotionally disturbed children. So if something in the schedule changed for some of them, it was like the end of the world. And I would just say, stop. Can you breathe for a second? Take 3 breaths. What are you trying to tell me? Miss Bashir, I left my homework home. I said, okay, what are your options? What can you do? And this is how we have to have these conversations. Like, this is what we have to do. I didn't say, oh, that's okay. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. I'm not going to take care of it because there's going to be problems that arise in his life. I need him to think.
You need him to reason, right?
What can I do here? Excuse me. And I think just explaining that to explaining that to your village. This is how we have to be in order for so-and-so to thrive.
Right.
We want them to thrive in life. We don't want them to always be relying on us all the time. Now, excuse me, when they're younger, yes, you may do certain things. And then as they get older, you have to be
wean off,
pulling your hand away. And that's hard for some parents. I had some parents really feel that I was attacking them. And at one parent, I remember at the end of the year, she said, I truly appreciate how you was with my daughter. You was straight to the point. You was so as a matter of fact with her. And I wish she had that last year.
Yeah. My mother said that to me. My mother said that to me because, I had to have that conversation with her, Jamilah. I mean, she was basically, as I mentioned before, I was a single mom. So she was the one that took care of my children when I was at work. And, you know, when my son was like, she wanted to overcompensate and she started doing things that she wasn't even doing before. And I was like, wait, mom, you know, we can't do that. I was like, you know, first of all, he's a young man, you know,
Right.
and I was like, mom, he has to become a man. And I was like, and what you're doing is going to cripple him. It's not going to help him. He has potential. There are certain things that we have to work around. I said, but there are certain things that you are accommodating that he doesn't need to be accommodated. And I remember when he graduated, and the fact that he graduated one of the top in his class, she said, you know, thank you for having that conversation with me, and you not allowing me as your mom to make you feel like you couldn't tell me that. And so
Exactly.
I just want to share that with all of the parents that are listening. If you have a village, an auntie, a grandmother, or, you know, anyone in your family, even the other parent, you know, try to, you know, really have that conversation, include them in the IEP meetings, because sometimes
Make
that can
sure
help
they
them have
know.
a better understanding, right?
Right, definitely. You're married. Let's say a lot of times moms are the ones who goes to the meeting and everything.
Right.
As a father, please know what your child has. Take some interest in it to know what type of support your child has. Because sometimes you have some parents in denial. Mom might be in denial and dad isn't, or dad is in denial, mom isn't. And it's like, and I understand because also our Black and brown children are diagnosed with various disabilities at a disproportionate rate, at a high rate
Right.
as
Right.
other children. There are a lot of Black boys in special education. They're identified as emotionally disturbed or intellectually disabled. Like, you know, they're quick to diagnose our children. But when your
Absolutely.
child gets a certain age, it can't be all these teachers, or you know what I mean, or
Saying
making
the same thing, right?
out your child. And it's like you got to really just sit back and look at the
Mm.
data and look at, okay, is it possible my child may have a disability? And it could be ADD, it could be ADHD, and it's like who doesn't have that these days? And I don't mean that to joke,
I think mine's developed as I got older.
that jokingly, but it's like who does not have that these days?
Right.
Now,
Right.
does your child necessarily need an IEP? No, they may not need an IEP. They may need a
Right.
504 plan where they get accommodations, you know, in class. Just like as an adult, you can have a 504 at your job. You can have a 504 plan, you know. So
Wait. Jamilah, say that again.
adults have a 504 is different from an IEP. So a 504 plan, some people have them at their jobs. Like couple teachers I work with, especially older teachers, they could not keep going up and down the steps, so they had to have a classroom on the first floor.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
like
Okay.
there are adults that have 504 plans. You
Mm-hmm,
have it at your
mm-hmm,
job.
mm-hmm.
They can't
Wow.
discriminate against you because you have a disability. You have a
Exactly.
504 plan. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I think the biggest thing is just taking the time to educate yourself about the IEP. You can you can definitely book a session with me, and we can
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
And the reason I made my company the IEP Coach LLC is because that's something I don't get tired of doing. I would do that if I was not getting paid for it, I would still do that because I enjoy helping parents understand. Like I want you to understand so that way from here on out, if anybody questions you about something, you know what needs to be in your child's IEP. For instance, if your child has sensory issues, the accommodations in an IEP need to match the needs of your child's sensory
Mm,
issues. Just like if they have speech, they definitely should be having speech services and accommodations in their IEP that's going to support their needs and help them. So you want to
absolutely.
make sure it matches what they need. And that goes back to me saying, please don't put just what you want in there, because I've had those parents, well, I want this and I want that, and
And that's not what they need.
because they know they can request it, but I'm like, do they necessarily need it? And then
Mhm.
especially when they get to middle school, I was talking to moms a lot. I'm like, Mom, they're going to middle school. Do you really want them to have something that's going to single them out? Like, really? Is that
Absolutely.
because you're already telling me
Absolutely.
they feel some type of way? So why would you do something else to make them be singled out?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I love it, especially I had emotional support. So I always invited them, bring your child to the meeting. And then when they
Yeah.
turn 14, and then when they turn 14, we're doing transition plans. That's when they can really start coming to their meetings. You
And
should
having a voice and having a voice.
understand, and this is your team. We're here for you.
Right.
What do you want? You know what I mean? I mean, I
Right.
had it at the very initial part of the transition, so they don't really know what they want to do. But
Mhm.
just let you know, I will always tell them from here on out, you will be invited to your IEP meeting, just so you are aware. You know what I mean? So feel free
Right.
to speak up and say, what it is you need, what you feel you don't need. You know,
Right.
some parents say, well, if my child gets a 70, I want them to be able to retake the test. And and then some kids get to the point, I didn't study. That's why I failed. I'm not
Right.
taking the test again. You know, I'm serious. There are some parents, well, if they fail the test, I want them to be able to retake it to
Because
pass.
they automatically assume it's because of, whatever
And
they're
it's like,
diagnosed with. And no, it's like, no, I'm just a normal kid and I didn't study. Right.
one of my friends, he teaches high school. That's what he said. He was like, listen, I'm not taking the test again. I didn't study. That's
Right.
why I failed. I did not study. Like, I've had kids have to say things to their parents like, please stop.
Mm.
Because, and I know, like, you love your kid and you have some, I call them,
But you
the
got to cut the umbilical cord.
parents. And I never forget the nurse in my school. This just was great. She said, do you want to continue to carry your child through the mud, or do you want to help them walk through it and teach them how to clean themselves off? Which one do you want to do?
Mm.
And that
Great
was so deep,
question.
because I'm like, you have so many parents carrying their kids, moving every obstacle out the way, not realizing that obstacle is there to teach them how to utilize these strategies and these skills that they've been taught to help them cope. If you remove everything, how are they going to grow intellectually? How are they going to grow
Exactly.
socially? And I know that's a huge issue right now because it's COVID. You're not out socializing with anybody.
Right.
And it's like, I know
Right.
some parents have that fear, are my kids going to have proper social skills? Because they're not out socializing. And it's like, you got to try and find or create.
Alternatives, right? Alternatives to socializing and things like that.
Right. Let's
Jamilah, we could talk
turn up.
girl, we could talk all night because you are just dropping gem after gem after gem. And I really, I've learned so much, even with being in the process of IEP and, having a child with special needs. I learned so much just in this hour conversation, that we've had. And I can see just from the comments that we've been able to post up, a lot of the parents, they had great questions, they had comments, and you can tell that, this has been very beneficial to them. So just before, in conclusion, I just want you to tell them where they can find you again, and where can they find your book and purchase your book, Because of Her.
Sure. So you can find my book at becauseofher.info. So www.becauseofher.info. It is also on Amazon. You can purchase it on Amazon. You can find me on Facebook, the IEP Coach LLC. You can find me on Instagram at the IEP Coach LLC. I always got to make sure I get it correct. So I have, now those pages are devoted to everything special ed, with my business, things that I post, videos, things about education. I find out and I share it right on my page. And it's also a link to my website. I also have a YouTube page. I'm trying to do more with that. It's called Jamilah the IEP Coach. That's my YouTube page. So that's where basically I posted a lot of my videos. So I have, what's the difference between an IEP and a 504? When COVID first hit, how to prepare for your meeting in COVID, like during COVID, during an online meeting,
Mhm.
progress monitoring, going back to school. Like, it's just, I had just so many different videos that I was like, oh, I need to put these on YouTube. So
Right,
it's
right.
the IEP Coach. That is my YouTube page. So you can find me there. And my nonprofit is called Because of Her. And I'm excited to do more with that this year. The focus is to educate my community, my Philadelphia community, because that's where I'm from. Philadelphia community about special education. So my goal is to just give them access to resources, connect them with resources, and also educate them about special education. So you can find information on me and at my website, www.becauseofher.info.
Great. So if you could just have one last comment, just one last, thought provoking thing that you want parents to really just walk away with, having an understanding as it relates to, drawing out the best in your special needs child during, this whole new norm of virtual learning, what would that be?
Oh gosh, what would I say? It's so much. Okay, with the virtual, especially with COVID, continue to advocate for your kid. If something is not working for them, don't be afraid to speak up for them. Speak up to their teacher and say, is there another way that we can do X, Y, and Z? If you need to contact the principal or anything like that, be your child's biggest advocate and keep them at the forefront at all times. Yes, I understand you want to have great relationships, and it doesn't mean you're going to have a bad relationship, but yes, you have great relationships with the providers of your child, but also keep their needs at the forefront at all times, and understand they will progress and they may not need certain services anymore, and that is okay, because some parents feel like you're taking it away, and it's like, no, they no longer need it.
Need it.
This IEP is working for them. This is great. That's what it's supposed to do. So
Right.
be the advocate, biggest advocate for your child.
Thank you so much, Jamilah. I so enjoyed this conversation. That's why I said we could talk all night. You got my eyes teary. I'm sitting over here like, that's right. And I mean, you got me going through all kind of emotions over here. So I'm sure the parents were at home, and I pray that this information, if it's, even if it was one thing that you took away that you could do differently, that would, make you a better advocate for your child, a better supporter of your child, to create a more nurturing village for your child. Whatever it is that you took away from this conversation, that was the intention and that is the goal. And so, Jamilah, I just want to thank you once again for being our very first guest for 2021 of Conversations with Asia.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you so much for such an informative discussion. And just again, thank you. And may Allah continue to reward you and place barakah and blessings in your work, your 501c3. Ameen. And so
for you for thinking of me, to invite me. Thank you so much. I see everything that you're doing with the community and what you're doing online, getting people. Oh, you want to write a book? I wrote one. I'm gonna show you how to do. Right. I watch you too. So may Allah reward you in all of your endeavors and in your business as well.
Ameen. So for those that are listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Conversations with Asia. We have a host of guests that we think are going to be just as great as Jamilah. Jamilah set the tone for the rest of the year, so these speakers better come with it. And so, we do. If you have a topic or a discussion that you think we haven't covered thus far, and you think that it is a relevant topic that needs to be discussed, that aligns with our mission, which is empowering and educating the women of our communities and the girls that they are raising, please reach out to me at jessica@jessicacares.org and send us an email and give us the name of who you think would be a great guest to have on the show that would bring some relevancy and just some education and empowering and walking away the way we're feeling tonight. That's the goal of this show. So thank you again for tuning in. And inshallah, God willing, we will see you next month for another great topic of Conversations with Asia. Thank you.